Thanks very much for joining us today. It is my pleasure to be standing here with the Aluminum Association and for us to jointly represent steel and aluminum, which are really strategic industries in the Canadian context and, frankly, the building blocks of the economy. We're here today to talk about the recent consultations undertaken by the government as they consider their policy responses to tackle Chinese overcapacity in electric vehicles and their supply chains. So these consultations come at a time when our CUSMA partners are taking direct action, placing tariffs on steel, aluminum, and EVs as a strategy to take direct aim at China's overcapacity in these industries. I want to be clear that the U.S. government in their 301 tariff package included steel and aluminum very broadly, and so has Mexico. For example, in the 301 tariff package of the United States, they issued 387 tariff codes that they propose, and 289 of those were directly related to the steel industry. So our reason for discussing this with you at this time is to be very clear. China does not play by the rules. Governments should be under no illusion that they do, and I think the steel industry is a very poignant example of this. For example, we have been feeling the devastating effects of Chinese overcapacity for over a decade. We are the largest user of Canada's trade remedy system, and about 50%, over 50% of all the trade cases taken are against China in this country. So we have seen despite 34 direct tariffs on Chinese steel, we still see a doubling of Chinese steel in our market over the last several years. So that's a proof point that the trade remedy system alone is insufficient to deal with the moment of what we're facing in terms of Chinese overcapacity. It's really important then that we take action and we stand tall with our trading partners of the U.S. and Mexico who have put tariffs in place. And as they do that, should we remain open and not doing that, we'll be much more exposed to further Chinese steel and aluminum. It is extremely important that we do not become the dumping ground of that excess capacity. And frankly, in our view, doing nothing is not an option. Failure to act risks good jobs in steel and aluminum communities right across this country. It would relate to losses in economic growth and investment in Canada. It would see a failure, frankly, in using cleaner green materials like Jean and my industries produce right here in this country for the green transition. And, of course, it would lead to inevitable challenges with our largest trading partner. So we think it's imperative that the government meet the moment and keep our CUSMA partnership whole, as well as protect our domestic steel and aluminum industries by taking an aligned approach with the U.S. 232 tariff package and getting that job done. We have a tool in the toolkit. It's called Section 53. It can be utilized. It's of the Import Act, and it can be utilized to make that happen. Thanks. I'll now turn it over to Jean.
Merci, Catherine. Thank you. You may wonder what brings an industry that produces 80% of North America's primary aluminium here today. Joining up with steel, one of Canada's other key strategic industrial sector. Well, Catherine pretty well covered it. The very actual, very ongoing threat of China's state-sponsored excess capacity in aluminium coming in through our border in unprecedented volumes, as the U.S. and Mexico, our CUSMA trading partners, enforce tariffs on Chinese origin aluminium products and electric vehicles made out of aluminium and steel. Our metal is like water, seeking the path of least resistance to reap the highest price. The fencing out of Chinese subsidized excess capacity by Mexico and the U.S. leaves us, Canada, as the sole tariff-free point of entry in the CUSMA trading space. In doing so, we expose ourselves to becoming the source of entry for Chinese products that will cause harm to our most important trading partner, the US, throughout our value chain, and eventually harm us through an eroding market, replacing our metal with Chinese semis and finished products. Comme l'eau, notre métal cherche la voie de moindre résistance pour obtenir le meilleur prix. Le mur tarifaire érigé par nos partenaires continentaux, les États-Unis et le Mexique, contre les excès de la Chine, font du Canada le seul point d'entrée hors tarif pour accéder au marché nord-américain. Nous sommes ainsi exposés à l'arrivée chez nous de produits chinois qui se retrouveront sur notre marché, le marché américain, causant des torts considérables à notre partenaire, les États-Unis, à travers la chaîne de valeur, causant ultimement l'érosion de nos marchés au profit de métal à forte empreinte carbone en provenance de Chine. This is a clear and present danger. What hurts our partner hurts us. We cannot and will not let this happen. It's not in our industry's interest and not in Canada's interest. Our association, on behalf of our industry, undertook 5 years ago a joint approach with our peer associations from Japan, the EU, and the US, G7 countries, to bring forward the full impact of China's non-market economy behavior and its impact on our value chains, our people, our jobs, and their communities. While China was jump-starting its aluminum industry from 2010 to 2020 through unprecedented excessive state intervention, the Western world's smelting capacity turned into a graveyard with more than 40 plants closing. Our neighbors to the south going all the way down to 4 smelters, left out of 15. China's state-sponsored excess capacity in aluminum is very well documented in OECD reports in 2019 and 2022, amongst others. It has only grown since. Let's be clear. Canada's aluminum industry competes amongst the best and against the best. It is the lowest carbon footprint aluminum produced in the world, with high-paying jobs. And our industry is working together on groundbreaking technology to make it zero carbon in the future. China's aluminum is far from being carbon-free. In fact, its metal is 7 times more carbon-intensive than Canada's. So when we allow imported Chinese metal to come into Canada, we are importing with it carbon at no cost and exporting jobs at a high price, and undermining our hard-earned technology investments. If you think Chinese EVs are cheap, it's because you're not paying the real cost as an individual, but we stand to pay the real price as society. We are free traders since we believe that rules-based level playing fields are the best way to thrive in the interest of the greater good. But China is anything but a free trader, and we therefore must protect our free trading North American environment, jobs, and people. We do expect the Canadian government to spare no effort in the coming days and weeks to ensure proper and timely alignment with our US and Mexican CUSMA partners. Thank you.
I'll just start off. I mean, what are you hearing from this government then? Because it sounds like a lot of industry are sort of sitting and waiting for them to do something.
There's a consultation process that just ended on electric vehicles and the whole value chain, including aluminum and steel. They got interventions from probably in excess of 200 representative groups. We are waiting for the government to come out with the right signals from this consultation. And at the same time, there is a political calendar, since the U.S. will be announcing its own tariff decision by mid-August to be implemented in early September. So we think that the period of the coming weeks is crucial for Canada to take a stand on this.
Yeah. I think it's from our vantage point, we expect the government to act and to be acting within this urgent window. So, the consultation process has closed. What it's really important to convey is we don't have weeks or months to review the input, that we actually need to move as quickly as possible. And we're trying to, entice that to happen by being very clear with what we need. And frankly, our expectations, we see no other option but to act.
I guess just as a follow-up, though, this isn't new. I mean, we'd heard from Minister Freeland's office back in May saying that Canada will not be a dumping ground. Yet here we are in August, and as you said, the window is starting to close. So are you shocked that it has taken this long to make any kind of decision on this, seeing as how, as the two of you laid it out so eloquently, we are the one sort of weak link in the North American chain.
Listen, I think it's important to recognize that all countries are moving in rapid time to address what, can be seen as a surge coming from China. So I don't want to convey that it's too late, although in our industry I've described to you that it's been an ongoing problem. But the new piece is the tariffs at the border that are just starting to pop up in allies. And we mentioned Mexico and the U.S., but I should point out there's many other countries where they're taking action. Some of them just on EVs, but most of them fully aligned with steel and aluminum, fully embedded. So they are, this is a very timely yet very urgent undertaking.
Have you done any preliminary analysis on what the cost would be in terms of revenue and jobs if the government fails to impose tariffs in line with Mexico and the U.S.?
Well, so we, since we've been feeling the pinch of this problem already and have taken many trade cases against China already, the problem will continue to be the erosion of the Canadian steel industry and our jobs. And you've seen a systematic decline in how much steel we're able to sell in our own country, and we can show you and provide you the figures of that decline. So, this is a systematic, increase in Chinese. Like I said, they doubled in the volume. They've not only doubled in volume, but they've increased in the product offerings. And furthermore, they have dominance in a much broader range of products than they ever have before. So we have all of that analysis that show us that, this is a very real threat to Canadian jobs, and that's why our unions are supporting us on this endeavor. And we're all of one mind here, and it's really a great. As you probably know, aluminum and steel would compete in the marketplace, but on something this existential, we're joining forces to say we need this support.
You discussed how there's already tariffs sort of in place for Chinese steel and aluminum through the trade remedy system. Are you basically saying today that the trade remedy system is broken and isn't working?
I think what we're saying is the trade remedy system is insufficient. So there's duties that come into place by each trade case, and the problem with the system is it takes too long. So from start to finish, it's about a whole year at significant expense and significant effort. But while that year is going on, we're continuing to see the imports come in. So the unfair trade continues. And, we're continually, I don't want to suggest that we have changes and improvements to make to the trade remedy system, but we believe with what's happening in the world at this moment in time and what I've described about the toolkit that the allies are using, we have to do more than just rely on our trade remedy system. So we actually need both.
And Canada has the right tool in its toolkit. It's called Section 53. That it can use very fast and in a very targeted fashion. And this is what we're asking the government to do.
If you don't mind me asking another question, you had mentioned, Mr. Samal, about how if you think that Chinese EVs are cheap, you're not seeing the whole cost. One of the difficulties that Canadian consumers have is that there is going to be a government sort of, I don't want to call it a decree, but the government has decided zero emission vehicles by a certain date, and Canadians are in an affordability crisis where all they see is the cost of it, and so a Chinese vehicle may seem like it's a Chinese EV may seem like a better option. What do you say to Canadian consumers about how the choices that they want to make versus what you're advocating for more expensive Chinese vehicles?
I think it's the right question to ask. I think it's a matter of coherence in policy making on behalf of the Canadian government. Again, when we buy a Chinese vehicle, we're getting a check from the Chinese government to buy carbon, and we're exporting jobs to China. Now, this could be justified if we did not have any manufacturing capacity in electric vehicles, in aluminum, and in steel. But it's not the case. We produce the lowest carbon footprint aluminum and steel in the world. We have world-class car manufacturing capacity. We've invested billions of dollars of taxpayers' money to develop a nascent electric vehicle ecosystem. So I understand from a consumer standpoint that the cheaply priced Chinese electric vehicle is of interest, but every time we buy one, we're throwing jobs away. And we will not be building up capacity and autonomy in our car industry. So it's a matter of a long-term vision with a short-term appreciation of the challenges that it represents. And Canada, like the provinces, have the capacity in their policy making to make access to electric vehicles more affordable. It's a matter of coherence in policy making.
Can I add a trade point as well? The steel industry and the aluminum industry as well, we are very competitive on price when it's a free trade environment. So, a fair trade environment. So on fair trade, if all factors are equal, we're highly competitive. So I think that's another aspect of the situation is, are we building our future economy on high carbon imports, which is perverse, as Jean's pointing out, and at low prices that come at a cost to Canadian jobs, other challenges around labor standards, environmental standards, and what have you. So these are the choices we're making, I suppose. But our view is it is good for everyone, all Canadians, good for our jobs, good for all industries to fight for fair trade.
What's the time frame for when you want the Canadian government to make this decision and take action?
In an ideal world, they would walk in lockstep with the U.S. government's announcement and implementation so that we don't open up a hole in the CUSMA fortress that will enable Chinese imports to come in. And I can tell you, if you go and check the data, the most recent statistics available, it's coming. It's growing. It's there.
What have you been hearing from government during these consultations as we head up to this deadline?
I think there's an appreciation for the challenges we're facing. What I'm nervous about is the urgency, and that's where the line of questioning has been going here. And I think that there can be, we can't emphasize enough how critical a moment in time this is to stand in lockstep with our biggest trading partner, the United States, and frankly, Mexico as our CUSMA partner. We can't be the only CUSMA country that is not taking this serious action for many reasons, but not the least of which will become the dumping ground for this excess steel capacity without those checks and balances at the border, and will take trade cases, but they'll take years to, finally do their job. So, that's the biggest issue I believe we face.
Yeah, same here.
As a follow-up to that, are you not getting that sense of urgency from the government?
I'm seeking it. I expect it. I'm seeking it, and we'll see, right? The consultation just closed, so, we're here to help ensure that they understand our expectations clearly.
I think we want to make sure they get to the start line and not wait to get to the finish line because it'll be too late. So they have to be there at the same time as their partners, the U.S. and Mexico.
To keep with the Olympic theme here, are we not even in the stadium yet when it comes to our other competitors, our CUSMA?
Well, we weren't
outlets?
before the consultations were announced. So, we want to recognize this consultation process is very important. We're glad it's been, that it was initiated, and we're seeking fast, timely, and aligned execution.
Any other questions? Merci. This concludes the press conference.
Thank
Merci.
you.
Thank
Merci,
you.
everyone. Thank you very much.